So we're talking about Pinterest growth. And it doesn't slow down because you're not creating enough content, but it could slow down if Pinterest doesn't clearly understand what problem you solve with your content or your business and so on. Now, today we're talking about Pinterest trust and how it's actually built. And this episode kicks off a three-part mini-series that will completely, in my mind, completely change how you think about Pinterest and even, how you interact with Pinterest. Welcome back to the Pin and Plan podcast. I'm Lisa, longtime Pinterest pioneer and a PBC member, or Pinterest business community member. We call it the PBC. And I'm doing this in video today, so hello, this is me. I am the owner and founder of Body, Mind, Mood. Yep, lift and build, because it's all about fitness for me. I love being in the gym, and yes, I do sell these. And I'm also the owner and founder of the Simple Site Lab. I love creating websites and website design on Squarespace, with Squarespace. Longtime member of Squarespace as well, and I'm a bit of a nerd when it comes to that. Now, I'm also someone who, honestly, if I'm being honest, I really believe that growth online should not feel so crazy and unhappy and not fun and stressful and right. And unfortunately, a lot of creators, and that is my cat in the background, a lot of creators are really feeling the pull with having to create content. It should be something that's sustainable, right? Now, if you've listened to my recent episode, the Pinterest Trust Loop, then you already know that this idea is something that I have been really playing with in my head for quite a while. And that you also know that Pinterest growth isn't about doing more, right? It's about building trust over time. Now, as a side note, if you see me looking down, it's because I have notes to keep me on point, keep me on track. I don't really like going off the cuff. It makes me feel funny. Now, that episode, the Pinterest Trust Loop, really helped clarify something for me, in that it's what inspired this mini-series. Now, over the next 3 weeks, I'm going to be breaking down how Pinterest Trust is built, how Pinterest content actually gets found on the platform, and of course, how Pinterest content converts. Because without, when we think about Pinterest content and how it's converting, you want to do it without all the pressure, the hype, and the stress and burnout that a lot of creators feel. So today we're starting with the foundation, trust, right? It's trust. So let me set the framework up here for you and just take this idea, this first idea that I'm going to talk about with you through all of the series and beyond, right? Pinterest is not Instagram, and it's not TikTok, and it's not, right? It is more of a, planning platform, and certainly has evolved into becoming a planning platform. I think, on the onset it was not. It's also a platform where people make decisions. So technically it could be a decision platform, because you go there to find solutions and then you kind of act on those, right? Now, what does that mean? It means Pinterest does not reward the loud and boisterous content creators, the ones that grab your attention for 15 seconds or 20 seconds. And I don't mean that in a negative way, but it's not like that. Pinterest actually rewards more creators and content based on how clear it is, how consistent it is, and if it actually helps to solve a problem or help the pinner or user looking at that content, giving them something to do with it, right? If Pinterest, in my opinion, can't really understand, who your content is for and what it helps them do, or right, then it doesn't really distribute it the way that you want it to. So don't get me wrong, Pinterest does distribute content, but it wouldn't distribute it as confidently. If your content, when the algorithm is looking at it, if it's not clear about who it's for and what it does, then it puts it out there, but not really to the people that you want it to go to. So how Pinterest understands your content. Let's do this. I want to start with something very practical here, because trust on Pinterest really does begin with understanding. And I think that can be said for most platforms. If you start off with understanding, and the trust will build. Before Pinterest can really trust your content, it has to really understand a few things. Specifically, what your pin is about, who the pin is for, and what kind of problem does it help solve, or what kind of solution or takeaway does it offer to the pinner or the user that's looking at that content. Now, Pinterest has a job, right? The algorithm has a job, and that is to match your content with the search intent of the people that come onto the platform. And it can only do that when your content is really specific and easy to understand. So clarity, 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 clarity. Oh, yeah, clarity. Pinterest users don't open up the app, and I think we can all appreciate this, and start scrolling sort of aimlessly. Do I scroll aimlessly on TikTok? Kind of. Kind of. Yes, I do. Yes, I do. But do I get on Pinterest and start scrolling aimlessly and hope that it's going to entertain me? No, I don't. You've got to remember that a lot of Pinterest users that come to the platform often come with a sort of, questions in mind, one or more, depending on what they're trying to do or what they're trying to learn about or achieve or decide on or buy. So think of things like, what should I do? Where do I start? What's the best option for me, and how do I fix this? These are some of the questions that they will ask. And so, you have to be sort of thoughtful about it, right? And think about that from the perspective of the pinners and the users on the platform. Pinterest prioritizes content, technically, in my opinion, that answers those questions in a very clear and thoughtful way. Whether it's through visual pins like video, or like photos, or whether it's through verbal, right? Or if it's, you've got a lot of context, however it's presented, as long as it answers questions clearly, and right, it will prioritize that content. On Pinterest, when you talk about clear understanding of content, what that means is, think of it like this: one clear topic per pin, one clear problem being solved per pin, and one clear result or outcome per pin that the pinner or user, right, however you choose to call them, can take away, right? What it isn't on Pinterest is, for example, inspiration that's vague. So the pin looks inspiring, but you're not quite sure how that matches this. Broad lifestyle messaging, right? We all know the creators that speak to everybody. They want to be everybody to they want to be something to everybody, but they end up creating so much content, and it's so broad that they actually don't help anybody. Just saying. And the presentation, in that kind of mindset, like when you're talking about content that isn't clear, it could be presented in any way. It can be video, it can be photos, it can be, right, whatever. There's no set standard for that. When your pin is, easy to understand, I believe Pinterest knows when to show it, right, who to show it to, and which sort of searches it belongs to, right, and it belongs in. It understands it right away. There's certain things that it needs to know in order to do that. Now, clarity, when we're talking about being clear on Pinterest and clear content and all of that, that is really the first layer of trust, right? Because Pinterest can understand you and you understand what it's looking for, then hey, you've got this kind of like new relationship happening. Once Pinterest starts to understand what your content is and who it's for and how it helps, then the next signal that it watches isn't what you think. It's not comments, it's not likes, but it's, actually saves. More to the point, quiet saves, right? Because people are saving on Pinterest, but engagement on Pinterest, I think most people recognize, is very, very quiet. It's not Instagram. You don't see these likes and, right? It's not like that. Most pinners, most users on the platform save ideas, get this, to secret boards. Yeah, they do. And I'm not sure, I'm just going to say this, if the algorithm actually knows that people are saving to private boards. We have actually, as pioneers, have reached out to a community manager to find out whether or not that's true. So keep that in your back pocket. I will let you know once I know. Pinners plan quietly, right? They're doing it unbeknownst to the creators, and they're revisiting the content that they save later, or consistently later. Like they just keep going back to it until they either make a decision, or maybe it's just something they enjoy watching, or whatever it is. But they're saving it, but they're not saving it outwardly. They're saving it privately on secret boards. So even if your pins don't get a lot of visible engagement, it doesn't necessarily mean that your content or your pins are not working. It just means that you can't see it. Okay. Now, that isn't the case sometimes for people who come into the PPC and say, well, I've got 0 impressions, my pins are dropping. That might be a different issue. This is something where, you're posting consistently, but you're just not seeing those likes, follows, right? Your comments. You get the idea. A save, in my mind, especially one that is saved to a private board, because that really is pretty significant, really does tell Pinterest that the content matters enough for this person or persons to keep it. And that is a huge trust signal. Huge, right? Really strong. I know that a lot of people look at comments, followers, monthly views, right? They're looking at likes, but those really, at the end of the day, in terms of engagement on the platform, don't have as much of an effect, I believe, as the quiet saves. And remember, when I talk about quiet saves, I'm not just talking about private boards. I'm also talking about people who save off of the platform. So if you notice when you go to a pin, you've got that little share icon. A lot of times you can share to Apple Notes, you can share to Google Keep, you can share to your computer, to your phone. You don't necessarily have to share it to a secret board. You might do all of those or none of them or one of them, right? Or just stay on the platform. So think about that. Food for thought. So Pinterest understands what you help with, right? Users are saving your content, but quietly on the down low. And the final layer of trust really is authority. And I mentioned this in the previous podcast. One of the things you really want to try and do, especially in the new year with content that you're creating, is try to become that sort of authority in your niche. And when I say authority, don't think of it as drastic, but someone that people go to for advice on whatever that particular niche is. Pinterest does not rank content based on popularity. Now, if you want to check that out, that's directly right from Pinterest Help. It ranks content based on topic authority. Okay, so it's not based on whether or not a pin goes viral, right? You could have a viral pin, but that doesn't change how the distribution of content is for you, your profile, your niche, and so on. Authority, right, or topic authority can, on Pinterest kind of means that you consistently talk about the same things. So that's one thing. Your content solves related problems. So you have a sort of main thing that you talk about, and then you have other things that you talk about, and it may solve those issues. And your pins or ideas, your content, it builds on each other, right? You're not kind of all over the map. That's not really what you want to do. And I do believe that smaller accounts do better than the larger accounts, and part of that is because they focus in, they sort of niche down on what they're talking about, on the content that they're creating, and they are consistent all the way. And they are always offering. Smaller businesses tend to offer more solutions and options and freebies, and right, because it's not quite the same thing as the larger companies. So they tend to do a little bit better when it comes to authority. Now, Pinterest wants, right, Pinterest has its own idea as well as about how it looks, how authority will look on the platform. Again, focus niches, usefulness, right? They're creating pins that are useful, and of course, visual patterns. So the content is very similar but different, and when you see it in your feed, it's that particular company or that particular creator. Pinterest wants to know at this point, right? Can we trust this creator to consistently help users in this particular niche or topic, right? That's kind of what they're checking out. And when the answer is yes for the algorithm, because it is algorithm, then I really believe distribution becomes better, and it just kind of starts happening and starts quicker, and it gets better, right? So pulling all this together, because I know it's a lot of information, Pinterest trust is built through understanding, through clarity in terms of the content. Specific topics, clear outcomes, right? It knows what it is as soon as it sees it. It doesn't have to think about it really. Quiet engagement, right? So quiet saves, secret boards off of Pinterest. So think Apple Notes or Google Keep. They save, but they're not noisy about it, and you may not even know that they've saved it. And of course, authority, where you focus in on strategy and outcomes, usefulness, right? You're consistent in your patterns and the sort of how you create content versus going viral, right? Because there are some people who come to Pinterest who just want to be viral. And to my mind, all of this combined is the foundation, right? Everything else sits on top of it, right? So you have sort of trust, but then you have, likes, comments, follows, monthly views, and the like. That all sits on top of that trust. Okay. So next week, we're moving into part 2 of the Pinterest Trust Framework, how Pinterest content gets found. I'll be talking about search first content, okay, Pinterest SEO without sort of all the hoo-ha and the hype, and making some, and, I guess kind of clarifying the SEO, because I know a lot of people really struggle with it, and why being searchable beats being trendy, right? When you come onto Pinterest and you're uploading content, you want to be searchable, right? You don't want to be in the moment. So if Pinterest has ever felt, I guess, unpredictable, confusing, then next week will bring a lot of clarity. So I hope you will join me. And I will be posting, even though it's the holidays, it's Christmas, yay. I will be posting next week and the week after. So listen at your leisure, because of course I know everybody's with families. Now, before I wrap this up, I want to say this, especially as we head into the holidays and towards 2026, because it's wow, 2026. If this episode helped you rethink Pinterest a little bit and how you approach Pinterest with your content, with your business, I would really love to hear from you inside of the business community. Again, you can always find me. Just tag me at Body Mind Mood. I would love to say hello. And as we close, out the year here, I really hope that all of you, those of you who listen, who are joining for the first time, that you give yourself some permission to slow down when it comes to content creation, because I see way too many people being stressed out about it and being really harried about it, and right, slow down, reflect, take a breath, and plan, but don't do it in a frantic way or chaos, like you feel like you've got it and you're rushing, and don't do that. Remember that Pinterest is a long game. Your business is a long game. In 2026, to my mind, I don't think it needs any more hustle, really. I think we've got a lot of hustle going on here. I think it just needs more understanding, a little more clarity. So I'm really grateful that you're here. And for those of you who joined me earlier this year, thank you for supporting me and listening each week. I really appreciate it. I'm excited for what you're building, and I will see you next week. I hope you have a great holiday and a happy new year. Bye for now. See you in the PBC.